So the reason this situation is going to be hard to combat is, well, because it's the private sector, as I said yesterday. It's going on in England too, and they're actually jailing people there for free speech because they don't have our First Amendment rights. But yeah, it's happening to them too. So this is how, with at least as far as America goes, this is how, because they're the private sector, your medical, nursing, whatever professional association, they there's dangers to them being on board with people like the World Health Organization and the UN. There is, because there's no transparency to that. Then they go and they push policy in Washington, which can then very much go along the lines of what the UN wants or what healthcare does in other countries, okay, which can be hurtful to America, which we're seeing, okay, and because they're a private professional association, and then they have all their tentacles that go, from American Nurses Association, Global Nurses United, National Nurses United, all the way to the International Nurse Council. And all of that is considered a private entity, but it's a danger because the danger is there's no transparency. Then those people go, as I said, to Washington. It also destroys grassroots movements. But this is deeper than that, because the reason, and this explains too, that's why right away American Nurses Association blocked me. Look, the way socialists are, and these are really communist, let's just face it. They've been working at this a long time. Everybody that heads up American Nurses Association, if they're ethical, they won't be there long, or else they're totally in the dark. But I don't know how you could be at the top of that organization and not realize what you're going along with. So, but that's why in 2020, every hospital association, every nursing, they all did exactly the same thing, because it's a socialized communist globalist movement is what it is, of globalist control. So this is the danger with having professional associations. It is. There's no, they're accountable to no one. There's no oversight over them. There's no transparency. All you know is whatever they tell you. And they lie. They use a bunch of people. And yes, I understand American Nurses Association has been around 100 years. I don't think they've done much good, because their goal initially was to increase nurses. Yet we have plenty of nurses, but they have forever in their history used the excuse that we don't have enough nurses. Well, that goes right along with your globalist agenda, which is why then, we need to migrate nurses. We need to move people. Because we need to stop people from having any loyalties to their country. They hate America, and yet they call themselves American Nurses Association. It's rather disgraceful. But the problem is there's no oversight over them, so they're really like bureaucrats, okay? And that's what's happened in England, is the bureaucrats, the administrative state. People have heard that here. This is your administrative state. So yes, our Constitution was written to keep the politicians in line, but what do you do about them? I don't know what the answer is to that. I don't. I know something needs to be done. And this is part of the problem with a lot of this is there's lack of accountability, no transparency, influence peddling, especially when and they don't hide that they're at the UN. The American Nurses Association and the World Health Organization, which, remember, Donald Trump had pulled us out of the World Health Organization, and that's why American Nurses Association hates him. Although they claim the last two elections they weren't going to support any candidate. That's because they're trying to make sure they played their cards right. I think that their cards have been seen for what they are. So Influence peddling. Private institutions, close relationships with UN officials and decision makers might create opportunities for undue influence and lobbying, potentially compromising integrity of UN processes and decisions. Well, I would change that to say compromising United States processes are what, the values of this country. That's the dangers. That's the dangers of what happens when you go and decide we're going to do global health on a level with a bunch of communist countries, okay? It's ridiculous that you think that you are going to tackle health and that's the other problem with doing this, is making everything uniform. And another problem is they make everything about certificates and they just create what is known as the professional organization ends up just being what destroys everything. It also, blurring the lines is a problem. The integration of the private sector expertise and resources into UN activities, just put US, might blur the lines between public and private interests, potentially compromising the US's, compromising what our values are. And so because there's no oversight and they're a private institution, that's why they've been able to get away with this for so long. Some other dangers is dominance of interest. Private sector participation in the UN forums like the Working Group on Big Data and Digital Ecosystems for the Planet might prioritize commercial interests over public good. Yeah, that's happening. I mean, that's the reason healthcare and nursing is worse and worse, is because of these are all the people that set the standard of care, and they're more aligned with this sickness. This could result in the promotion of proprietary technologies and data collection methods, potentially exacerbating existing inequalities and biases. And I already talked about the lack of transparency. Undermining accountability. Private institutions' involvement in UN initiatives such as the proposed Convention on International Information Security might undermine accountability of state actions in cyberspace and harm digital human rights. That's happening, isn't it? Yeah. When I tend to get silenced whenever I go after the professional organizations of nursing. So when I talked yesterday in my other video, it was a video taken down from the World Economic Forum, telling the people in the private institutions that you have to be stateswomen that are familiar with webcraft. Well, webcraft is very much about controlling the web and silencing. This could lead to a lack of transparency and oversight and allowing private interests that can affect the very freedoms we have in this country. And then what I kind of already mentioned, this changes to healthcare policy and funding. Collaboration between American Nurses Association and the WHO could lead to shifts in healthcare policy and funding priorities, which might alter the Constitution's provisions related to the role of government in healthcare, taxation, and the allocation of resources. You see, that's why this is such a problematic situation, a dangerous one. Influence on professional standards. American Nurses Association involvement with the WHO could result in the adoption of international nursing standards. Yeah, and many of those nursing standards, like say in Britain, they have the they have a socialized nursing system. And what are these? What are our medical professional associations pushing? They're pushing one payer system. They're pushing socialism. And so this is how they did it. And they're protected because they're a private sector, in the private sector. And this is just talking about what I said, that they end up hurting like grassroots movement. They hurt healthcare at a local level because they're on this big global scale. ANA's collaboration with the WHO might create tensions between global priorities and local priorities. Yeah, I'm already seeing that. Other people are too. So this is what the danger is. That when the private sector, who isn't accountable to anybody, there's no oversight over them, because technically they're not part of the government, but they are too. but they aren't on paper. They're just considered the private sector. When they go and they've been on board for decades with the UN, that's why socialism and communism is being pushed here, is because of them.